We're gonna go into the dumbest mistakes that every weightlifter makes, and we're gonna start right now. So when we're looking at the sport of weightlifting, we have to think through two very simple lenses. All we have to do is look at one, what are we gonna be doing as an athlete? So in the sport of weightlifting, what is the athlete's job? And then two, in the sport of weightlifting, what is the coach's job? All we have to do to define where we see incredible mistakes that weightlifters tend to make, and sometimes even coaches tend to make. And so the first thing that we have to do after we identify those two lenses is say, okay, what's the purpose of the athlete? In the case of weightlifting, all we have to do as an athlete is lift as much weight as possible in the snatch and as much weight as possible in the clean and jerk. That's literally all we have to do. That's it. As a coach, the coach's job is to take past experiences that they've had with other athletes, relate them to the individual athlete that they're training so that they can get that individual athlete to lift as much weight as possible. Okay, so you have the athlete's job, lift as much weight as possible. The coach's job, use past experiences to get this athlete to lift as much weight as possible. Now, the way I like to look at this athlete-coach relationship is then say, okay, in the beginning, you're gonna have a relationship with an athlete and a coach, and typically the coach is gonna have this semi-dictatorship. So for a certain period of time, there is going to be like, just do this, don't say anything. And that's gonna help inform the coach about where this athlete is. It's gonna help educate the coach. It's gonna help educate their relationship. And the coach can start to make decisions based off that initial lens. And then probably over 2 to 5 years, that's going to shift into about this representative democracy, right? Where the coach and the athlete are sort of coming together. The coach is gonna have all these major decisions, but the athlete can come in and say, hey, I'm feeling this. Hey, this is what's going on. Hey, blah, 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 just so you are aware. And they can have this relationship together to work towards that main goal, to lift as much weight as possible. And then as time goes on, okay, so let's say we're 4 to 6 years into the relationship, 7 years into the relationship, this is a long relationship. That's where things start to become much more collaborative. The athlete has a better understanding of the training system. The coach has a very firm understanding of that athlete, and they can start to really work together. That's where that might happen. Some athletes, they want that to happen. Some athletes don't want that to happen. It's more of just like, hey, you just keep telling me what to do and I'll just keep executing. So that's the lens that we have to look through as we're looking at these potential really dumb mistakes. So this is gonna take us into that first area where we're gonna go into some of the dumb shit that weightlifters do, specifically in the realm of training, okay? So when we're looking at the training realm, I've had athletes come in and I've seen other athletes, I've heard stories from other coaches where athletes will come in, they wanna pay this coach, they want to hire this coach, they wanna be a part of that coach's team. And then they'll say, well, I know my tendencies. And one of the issues here is I see this or I experience this and it's like, okay, cool. You think you know your tendencies, but I watch you lift and you don't know what positions you're even close to hitting or missing. You don't even see what you're doing or feel what you're doing in these different positions. So how can I comprehend or at least respect your acknowledgement of your tendencies? You might be jumping backwards and you tell me that you're not jumping backwards. You might be bumping the bar forward and you actually jump forward and you don't feel that you're jumping forward. So now we have to be there as a coach and say, do you really understand your tendencies when you're not even executing things in the light of what we're working towards? Another thing in training, one of the biggest mistakes is training with your headphones in. So this is where you work with a coach and then let's say you're working under 90%. Okay, so you're under 90% of your max. You can still make some technical adjustments under 90%. Let's say that you're doing doubles or triples or even sets of 4 where you might hear a cue from a coach and you can then fix that technical inconsistency during that quad set or during that triple. But you have your headphones in, so you can't hear anything. So then you hit a lift and then you keep your headphones in, and while a coach could be instructing you or providing some type of feedback, you still don't hear what the coach is saying. The only sport that I really see this happening in is typically in the sport of weightlifting, at least if we're thinking about like the Olympic level sports. If I'm looking at a shot putter, I don't think I have ever seen a shot putter or a discus thrower or a sprinter train and go through technical patterns with headphones in while their coach is standing there and their coach cannot provide any feedback because their headphones are in. It's something that is very typical for weightlifters to do. I do believe there's a point to wearing headphones if you're squatting or something along these lines, but take those headphones out and you're gonna get some better feedback from your coach. The next two aspects around training are gonna be based around rest periods and wanting to increase weight. We'll see weightlifters take 4, 5, 6 minutes of rest periods, and then when they get into a competition, they can't handle the go momentum that you might have inside of a competition. And then on top of that, we'll have athletes that miss a weight and they want to move up, and then they're in a competition and they might miss a lift in the back and they want to keep building to go up instead of staying at that weight and taking it again. Or they miss a weight on the platform and they want to increase their next attempt, and then they miss that again. And then they're stuck with a total that's 10 kilos potentially lower instead of just repeating that weight. And these are things that we've planned inside of our app Peak Strength with the weightlifting portion. We've planned specific rest periods based off of periodization. We've planned specific weight jumps specific to your goals, specific to your capability and what you're doing with the load that's on the bar in that specific period of periodization. That's one of the coolest parts about Peak Strength, is that it's going to help you with the rest period. It's going to help hold you accountable with what weight you want to put on the bar. We need to get consistent with that technique, and we need to understand what types of rest periods we need to optimize our overall performance. And then finally, one of the other big factors is complaining and self-sabotage. Okay, this is really, really popular in weightlifting. This is popular on the international level, where we'll have somebody say, I'm struggling to gain weight, or when I'm eating this food, whatever, I'm tired all the time, or I don't know why we flew here, or whatever it might be. All of these sabotaging thoughts and all of this different level of complaining, and that's leading towards having a negative impact on your training. That's leading towards having a negative impact on your overall performance. So we've got to keep all these things in the back of our minds as an athlete and make sure we're not doing that on a consistent basis so that we can lead to greater development. Okay, so now getting into competition. Okay, so we're thinking through this lens, and we've got the training aspect, now we've got the competition aspect. The first part of competition is not having your body weight dialed in. Oftentimes I'll have conversations with athletes and it's, hey, I've got my nutritionist, don't worry about it, I'll get it taken care of. 2 hours ahead of the weigh-ins, hey Dane, I'm a half kilo overweight. Dude, what? Yeah, should I spit? It's like, you've been talking about having your weight dialed in. Why are we a half kilo overweight when we're 2 hours out? These are factors that need to be handled. That's an extra stressor that can lead to greater problems, that can lead to feeling like crap when you step out onto the platform. So we've got to have that body weight dialed in when we're getting into a competition. The next thing is showing up late to weigh-ins and then just nonchalantly walking through as though nothing is happening. Why are we showing up late to a weigh-in? Why are we not sure what needs to happen? This would be similar to a football team, an entire football team just showing up late for a game. That doesn't happen. We have to show up on time, ahead of schedule, and know where our body weight is at when we're getting into weigh-ins. The next thing when we're talking about competitions is looking at two aspects of taking warm-up weights that aren't specified for you. So one thing that really good coaches should be doing, maybe we should do the dumbest things that coaches do in weightlifting for a future video, is that if we're looking at this, coaches should have a plan dialed in. And they should even have a plan dialed in if something happens that is unexpected in the back. Somebody misses a lift, anything along these lines, right? What we have is, if that's happening and then you look over and your athlete's taking a lift off the timesheet, they're not following the time, they're not following the right weight that's on the bar, or you're even cueing them, they have their headphones in as they're warming up and you're cueing them to take the lift and they don't hear you. Okay, so that's three different aspects. They're either not following the time slot, they're not following the weight prescribed, or they've got their headphones in and they're just taking it whenever they want. So those are three areas that can then lead to poor performance or a mistimed warm-up. And then finally, one of the things that absolutely drives me nuts as a coach is the sole purpose of the athlete is to lift as much weight as possible. If we are running a meet and I'm standing at the board and I'm looking at the board and I'm trying to figure out the attempts and I'm trying to figure out where we can sneak in for some medals or to win, and we're looking at everything, you as an athlete should not be up at the board. Okay, you as an athlete should be sitting in your chair, focused on one thing: lifting as much weight as possible. Now, if the coach comes back to you and says, hey, we could do this weight or we can do this weight, how you feeling, blah, blah, blah. That's an okay conversation. It's not great, it's an okay conversation, but that should be the max that you're contributing. You should be focused on one thing and one thing only as an athlete, lifting as much weight as possible. Okay, that's gonna take us into recovery and coachability. Okay, so now we go through the next big one is athletes come in, they're saying, I can't recover, I feel fatigued, you don't know my tendencies, you don't know what does best for me. You know, I've been in this sport for at least 18 months, I'm so well educated, even though you've spent 15 years watching thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours of lifting, I still know more than you, but you go home and you're sleeping for 5 hours. And then also when you go home and you're not sleeping for those 8 to 10 hours, you're also not following the mobility that we have prescribed to you inside of our strength training app, Peak Strength, available at peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. Those are all key factors. You've got to be dialed in with your sleep, 8 to 10 hours. You've got to be doing 20 minutes of mobility in the morning, 20 minutes of mobility at night. You also have to understand technical models. What is the technical model? What is the position and the principles? The principles of patterning don't change. Body types change, but the principle of technical execution does not change. Keep the bar as tight as freaking possible by pushing the knees back, keeping a flat foot as long as possible, having knees reciprocate under the bar, and keeping the bar very, very tight. So if we can study the sport, comprehend the technical model, while we're doing our mobility, while our nutrition's dialed in, and while we're sleeping 8 to 10 hours, that's gonna make our recovery that much freaking better. But if we don't take care of those little things, it's all for naught. We're not going to be able to lift as much weight as possible. And then finally, that sort of couples in with when you're looking at an athlete as a coach and you have your technical model sort of overlaid over top of this athlete and you're looking at errors that they might be making and you see 2 or 3 lifts and you're going, okay, they're doing this based off the technical model that I have in my mind. This is what's happening based off of their tendencies. You know, their butt rises really fast, so we've got to cue this specifically, blah, blah, blah. And you go through and you're sort of troubleshooting everything, and then you start to contribute the technical execution for that weightlifter. And the weightlifter explains why those tendencies are happening and why they want them to continue to happen. Meanwhile, they want you to coach them. And that's another big factor. It's like, no, this is not the discussion. I don't want you to explain. And in most cases, it's the men. So mansplain your way out of improving your technique. I want you to focus on the technical pattern, and I want you to execute that as well as you possibly can. So when it comes back to those 2 main lenses, athletes just focus on lifting as much weight as possible. Coaches focus on getting that athlete to lift as much weight as possible. What we then need to do is say, okay, the main thing is just that. We've got to get it done. We've got to look at specific lifts. We've got to look at the specific pattern. We have to understand the technical models. We have to make sure that all the things outside of the gym are dialed in. And then ultimately, you've got to head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store, where you can download Peak Strength and you can get into our Olympic weightlifting portion of our strength training app. It's going to be periodized based off of exactly where you need to peak. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.